Fish consumption in Kenya remains low at about 4.5 kilos per year. This fares badly compared to the world average of about 20 kilos. The question is, what are we doing to upscale fish consumption in Kenya? On the other hand, fish production is also falling at a rate that is faster than anticipated. Tonight on Inside Government, we are joined by Professor Ntiba Michelin. He is the PS in charge of fisheries, aquaculture and blue economy. He's going to explain to us and help us understand what is Kenya doing to, number one, help its population with fish consumption and, of course, police its waters. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Inside Government.
Thank you very much.
First of all, help us understand, why aren't we consuming as much fish as we should?
Well, first of all, to say this, that for a long time, and from the colonial times, fisheries was not considered as a great economic sector. And you remember that it is only in 2016 when we launched a new fisheries law, the Fisheries Management and Development Act. The first fisheries law in this country was on sport fishing. And you can imagine at that time, many Africans were, it was a crime to be seen catching fish and things like that. One is to also indicate that it is only about 2008 when the Ministry of Fisheries and Development was created that we really started thinking of fisheries as an important sector. And since that time, we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen a lot of transformation, a lot of putting thought together about this sector. And I would say that from 2008 to now, we have grown from a fish consumption per capita of 1 kilogram per person per year to 4.5 kilograms per person per year. Basically because of one, trying to create awareness on the benefits of fish eating, because very many Kenyans were not fish eaters. Very many Kenyans would be scared of fish as food, particularly if you are not from the edges of the lakes and the ocean. And over that period, we've done a lot of Eat More Fish campaigns. If you have a fishery and you do not encourage or promote fish consumption, then you will be in trouble. Because then what it means is that it will not become a way of life, a lifestyle, and things like that.
So it was more of a cultural barrier and economic barrier.
It still is.
It still is. So what are we doing as a country to address this?
First of all, like I've said, is to encourage and promote eating fish amongst Kenyans. Kenyans must eat the fish that they produce, because if we don't eat it, there is general competition. There's scramble for fish in the world, because there's a lot of shortage of it all over the world, because the capture legions in lakes and oceans and seas, the production reached the maximum sustainable levels a long time ago in the 1960s, so we don't expect more fish to come from those waters. That the new fish that we anticipate will feed the world will come from farmed systems. So you find in the country we started a very robust fish farming program during the economic stimulus program, during which we rose production from around 2,000 metric tons per year from aquaculture itself, farmed fish, to about 60,000 metric tons in a very short time over a 4-year period, during which we introduced fish farming in over 126 districts that time, the constituencies that time. But when we devolved it, the attention to it kind of slackened, and we are picking it up again, where we want to commercialize aquaculture in 15 counties now. We are going to put 15 billion Kenya shillings in making aquaculture a commercial venture in 15 counties.
It's good you have brought about, that issue of the stimulus package back in the year 2008, and there was a lot of euphoria about, aquaculture and fish consumption. But at the end of the day, farmers were left with fish, not knowing where to take them, okay? Unscrupulous traders, infiltrated the market with fake fish meal. Have we put in place, proper mechanisms to ensure that a repeat of the past does not recur again?
Now that you say that, it reminds me how I went to Trans Nzoia during that period to inspect what the farmers were doing. And I was confronted with one group that had 50 fish ponds full of fish. And instead of these farmers being joyous, they turned around me in a very pensive mood, telling me, "P.S., the fish are here." And it is like the fish was mine. And I kind of got shocked and didn't know what to tell them. But I asked them for a meeting. I called everybody to a meeting in the fish ponds, and a whole crowd formed around us. And I asked them, who ate fish 2 months ago? Surprisingly, everybody put up their hand. Then I asked, who ate fish last month? Everybody had eaten fish. Who ate fish 2 weeks ago? Everybody put up their hands. Who ate fish yesterday? 3/4 of them raised their hands. So I asked them, where does this fish come from? How come your fish here? And you are complaining that you can't find market for your fish. So suddenly they discovered that they were the market. I asked for a net. We fished one pond, sold it on the spot. By the time I reached in Nairobi, there was no fish in those 50 ponds.
Was the disconnection, was it on the marketing aspect or information side?
I think both. And that's why in the new law, we have created a new institution in government, in the ministry, the Kenya Fish Marketing Authority. Also, as you recall, last year, government also established another institution which would also play a very big role in not only boosting fish trade and fish business, the Kenya Fishing Industries Corporation, to boost the fish trade everywhere, whether it is in the seas, particularly where we don't seem to be doing very well, in the lakes, in aquaculture. So we expect that we are going to see this changing. But remember, since 2008, we have seen the per capita consumption of fish change in this country from 1 kilogram per person per year to the current 4.7 kilograms per year. And we anticipate that by 2020, we should raise per capita consumption to 10 kilograms per person per year.
So the plan is to double this number, in the next 3 years?
Or even more.
Even more? Yes. That sounds like a Herculean task, but definitely we'll be watching to see how this goes. Tell me this, why is fish production in Kenya declining?
Well,
from 100
I think first,
metric tons in 2016.
I think to put this in focus and in perspective, we like to look at fisheries as a sector. This sector should not be a poaching and a hunting kind of sector. It should be an organized sector with a lot of control so that we do not disrupt the stocks, so that we do not overfish, so that we retain a breeding stock that will sustain the fishery into the future. One of our main areas of production of fish was Lake Victoria. But you see, Lake Victoria over time has become political, as you know. Yeah. Every other time you hear of Kenyans arrested when they try to cross onto the other side of our two countries. So that is one of the impacts. Remember also, we have only 6% of the surface waters of Lake Victoria. The bigger parts are in Uganda and Tanzania. So we have a really small area for harvesting fish in that lake. But also...
And the sad part is also that the Kenyan side is the most polluted.
No, but it is also the most productive. If you think about the breeding stocks in that lake, that most of them breeding, over 70% occurs in the Kenyan side. Now the tragedy of it all is that we Kenyans, particularly in the now patch fishery, where you are not allowed to catch a now patch that is smaller than 50 centimeters, that we keep them when they are young, but at the time they are approaching 35, 40 centimeters, they migrate into the deeper waters of Uganda and Tanzania. So I suppose these Kenyans get into trouble in trying to follow the larger fish into the deeper waters of our neighbors. And I think this calls for some further discussions at the EAC level to be able to have a new, fisheries management regime in Lake Victoria, probably to set up quotas per country, so that when country X has fished its quota, then it stops fishing, so that then we maintain a stable stock in that lake, and the people stop fighting and catching each other at their borders.
And actually, when you look at Lake Victoria, I mean, it's just a small, or what I would say is just a drop in the ocean in terms of the capacity or the potential that we have. When you look at our waters, for example, Lake Indian Ocean, yes, we have barely scratched the surface. The entire stretch, almost 200,000 nautical miles of our waters, they are inhabited by illegal trawlers, from East Asian nations.
Well, that is true. Everybody thinks the way you are thinking. I remember one time I was asked to go and start the Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization in Njinja, Uganda, for the East African community as an ocean fisheries scientist. I didn't feel quite well that I was being taken to some small piece of water, like you are calling it. But upon arriving in Lake Victoria, I suddenly discovered that the people issues in relation to the fish were more serious in the lake than in the Indian Ocean where I worked. I think Lake Victoria is the second largest freshwater lake in the world. It is also the lake that produces the highest amount of freshwater fish in the world. So it is a big fishery. In fact, that's where we get most of the fish traditionally. But also to think the other way around in the sea. The sea is a difficult ecosystem, as you know, because of its sheer expanse and things like that. And that it requires a lot of investments in terms of the tools to use there, in terms of training people to be able to manage the ocean waters. And that's why you see government has paid a lot of attention in the last few years to put investments in turning around the fishery of the Indian Ocean. Whereas we produce about 100,000 metric tons now from our fresh waters, small as they are. We only produce about 23,000 metric tons of fish from the ocean where we have almost a half of Kenya is in the ocean, and we want to tap those resources. This is why we have in our blue economy agenda and in the Big Four agenda, we are putting a lot of attention in the Indian Ocean. First of all, to develop the fisheries infrastructure. Fisheries infrastructure in the sense that when you don't have proper landing sites, then you don't expect there to be a fishery that works. When you are not able to control IUU, when you are not able to control foreigners in your waters, they are basically stealing from your waters.
That's why we created the Kenya Coast Guard.
Yes, that's why we created the Kenya Coast Guard. That's why we created a modern fisheries law. That's why, using the fisheries law, Kenya was able to ratify the FAO, Port State Measures Agreement, the agreement that prevents people from poaching from other countries' ocean waters, that it is now mandatory that if we license you to fish in our waters, first you have to land in Kenya before going away. That's why you found last year the president launched the Liwatoni Fisheries Complex as the first Kenyan fishing port to provide a facility where fishing vessels can be able to land, whether they are local or whether they are foreign. And the effort of government is to be able to create fish landing sites all along our coastline so that fishers can use these facilities. They will be equipped with cold storage facility because, you know, fish is a very perishable product. Yeah. It is also a place where we will be able to control movement of people. Remember, these landing sites are small border posts. They play a very important role and things like that. We also like to assist fishers in terms of training, in terms of giving them better crafts to go beyond near-eye water. You see, many of our fishers are the Kenya coast, and I think this is something we have discovered now. Fish in very shallow water. I think it is also cultural, because I was told that the other day I was told you are using the wrong strategies. These people are not fishers. They are not like the Kenyans around Lake Victoria and things like that. So we need to train them. We need to ensure that they are fishers. We need to ensure that they can be able to handle the craft. Working with the government, we need to give them better fishing vessels so that they can go beyond the reef.
And another reason why, the Kenyan fish stock is dwindling is the so-called distant water fishing nations who have access to our exclusive economic zones where they pay fees. But the problem is that we do not have the capacity to monitor and see what exactly happens when we give them the licenses. What do we plan to do about this?
Kimani, that's why I've just said government has started a process of developing fishing port infrastructure. The Liwatoni facility in Mombasa is Kenya's first fishing port since independence. We will develop other fishing ports in Shimoni. We will develop another one in Kilifi and in Lamu.
So 3 more.
3 more. We are now developing 5 fish landing sites, modern ones, complete and operational. We are going to continue developing this until we have a series of those all along our coastline as point of control of the fishery. I have talked that we have a coast guard, which is meant to guard our territorial waters. We also got very robust vessel monitoring system. We have a complete vessel monitoring system in Mombasa, that ships that are there for fishing purposes are seen all the time. So I think as a government, we are investing a lot in transforming the marine fisheries. In fact, this is the right time for marine fisheries to take advantage of this. We also have a program with World Bank, which is going to be operationalized soon, of 10 billion Kenya shillings. And this is one of the largest programs in the World Bank's Blue Economy portfolio. So I think we are doing the right things. We are investing the right way. And also Kenyans have begun to change their mentality and start resonating with the sea, particularly after we hosted the Blue Economy Conference last year. Everybody wants to go and invest in the sea. So I think this is the time to be able to do this.
Tell me this. Is it okay for a country like ours, blessed with huge water bodies, to be importing fish from China?
You see, fish is a commodity for trade according to WTO. We also export fish. In other words, also people import fish from us, like now Patch and from Lake Victoria, a lot of shellfish, crabs, and mollusks, tuna, things like those ones. We also export. Now, we are at a stage where the amount of fish we are producing is not enough.
Even though we can produce more.
That's why we said we have the capacity to produce more. So our strategy is to increase the production. Like I've said, from the marine waters, we are going to increase production from the current 23,000 metric tons to 126,000 metric tons by 2022. We are going to increase aquaculture production from 12,000 metric tons to well over 85,000 metric tons by 2022. We are going to increase productivity from the fresh waters from the current 100,000 metric tons to 185,000 metric tons. So you can see the strategy is very well crafted to be able to do that. And I believe then after this MTP, we will revise the figures upwards. Remember also, very many Kenyans have started eating fish. From a fish consumption per capita of 1 kilogram per person per year to 4.5 kilograms per person per year, I think is an astronomical growth. And we expect that there is shortage of fish in the market. That's why you hear like we will import. People will find a market here because people want to consume fish and so on and so forth. I was in Portugal recently. In Portugal, the per capita consumption of fish by Portuguese is 57 kilograms per person per year. 57. Portugal as a country can only produce a quarter of that in demand, which means 75% of that comes from elsewhere. But I'm not trying to say that we import. I think the strategy, like I pointed out, is to continue increasing our production. We think that in this MTP, we will have an additional 315,000 metric tons additional fish. That's the strategy.
We have. Bon appears because, we have to wind up. Tell me this, what are we doing to address the cost of fish among Kenyans? Because that is also another challenge that Kenyans are facing. Yes, they may want to consume fish, but the cost is a bit prohibitive.
Yes, Kimani, in the law of supply and demand, when the supply is low, usually the costs tend to go higher. But also, why we want to exploit the unexploited waters now, like in the Indian Ocean, and why we want to increase aquaculture production, because that's the way to go, is so that we can be able to have higher productivity, more product in the market, so that the prices can come down. Aquaculture production is usually very expensive, So we need to find ways of producing fish at a cheaper cost of production. But I think the cost of production now is high. But also what I want to ask those who are farming fish is not to manipulate the price of fish in the market, because then we hurt our people. Fish is good as food in terms of its nutrition, and it should be available, cheaply. And that's why we want to commercialize aquaculture first in 15 counties. And this will spur growth of aquaculture in the other Kenyan counties.
Very good. Tell me things. There was a lot of talk, about establishing a fisheries crime law enforcement academy.
Yes.
How far are we with this?
I think the University of Nairobi is well onto this, but also as a government, the creation of the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard, remember, we say, is a multi-agency police force. It has got officers seconded from the agencies that are involved. We second officers into the Coast Guard. The Navy seconds officers in the Coast Guard, because they're the ones who can handle ships and other things to do with waters. Fisheries Department is supposed to provide 50 officers into the Coast Guard to be able to enforce the fisheries law, and others. You have the Marine Police, KRA, and so on and so forth. Because our waters are not just about fish. There's so many things that happen there. Oil spills, other crimes related to fisheries. You find contraband, people transporting drugs, through the same fishing ports and landing sites, and things like trafficking human beings. So it's a whole complex of activities that happen in the sea. And that's why I think we did the right thing to have our Coast Guard. I think there's going to be a lot of training. I think in the academy, in the Coast Guard, we will also have a prosecutor's office. In fact, the legal officer who was here has gone to the Coast Guard. So I think those combination of things, we are going to have the Fish Force Academy. The University of Nairobi is at that. I know we have sent officers for training in these areas. So I think it's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
What are your final words?
My final words is to say, look, I'm happy that Kenyans in general now are very aware about blue economy. They are very aware about water economies. And the problem is that many of us sleep on land, wake up on land, do activities like we are doing now on land.
And even die on land.
And even So I think we should pay more attention and invest more in unraveling investments in the blue economy. Let Kenyans invest their money in blue economy. And in the fullness of time, we will make a new economy. We will have more jobs. We will have more food. We will be happy as Kenyans moving into the future. And you see also, this is good when you think about it. After the conference of last year, everybody in the world is holding a blue economy something everywhere. Yeah? Around ourselves, everywhere in Africa, things like those ones. So, but I think that this is good.
Good. Asante.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us here. Well, we've been talking to the PS in charge of fisheries, aquaculture, and blue economy, Professor Michelin Ntiba, right here on Inside Government, expounding more issues around fisheries and what the government is doing to secure our waters and to increase fish uptake as well as production in the country. You have been watching us from KBC. My name is O'Brien Kimani. We'll do this again next Thursday, same time, right here on KBC Channel 1. Until then, bye for now.